Magic and Mystery in Tibet by Alexandra David-Neel. I related the vision to the Lama, but he only laughed at me without answering my questions. Yet upon another occasion, he repeated the phenomenon. He utterly disappeared as I was speaking with him, in the middle of a wide, bare tract of land, without tent or houses or any kind of shelter in the vicinity. The creation of a phantom yidam, as we have seen it described in the previous chapter, has two different objects. The higher one consists in teaching the disciple that there are no gods or demons other than those that his mind creates. The second aim, less enlightened, is to provide oneself with a powerful means of protection. How does the phantom of the deity protect its creator? By appearing instead of the latter. It is the custom in Tibet that the lamas who are initiated to that peculiar practice put on each morning the personality of their yidam. This being done, the evil spirits who happen to meet these lamas do not see them as men, but under the frightful shape of the terrible deities. A sight which, of course, prevents them from attempting any mischief. Expert magicians in this art can, it is said, hide their own real appearance under any illusory form that they choose. Among the many who each morning gravely take on the shape of their yidam, probably very few are really capable of showing themselves as such. I do not know if they succeed in duping the demons, but they certainly do not create any illusion to human eyes. Yet I have heard that some lamas have been seen in the appearance of certain deities of the Lamaist pantheon, incited by many wonderful legends regarding the powerful ancient Tubthobs to create tulpas. A small number of Ganaspas and lamas endeavor in great secrecy to succeed in that peculiar branch of esoteric lore. However, the practice is considered as fraught with danger for everyone who has not reached the high level, mental and spiritual degree of enlightenment, and is not fully aware of the nature of psychic forces at work in the process. Once the tulpa is endowed with enough vitality to be capable of playing the part of a real being, it tends to free itself from the maker's control. This, say Tibetan occultists, perhaps happens nearly mechanically, just as the child, when the body is completed and able to live apart, leaves its mother's womb. Sometimes the phantom becomes a rebellious son, and one hears of uncanny struggles that have taken place between magicians and their creatures, the former being severely hurt or even killed by the latter. Tibetan magicians who also relate cases in which the tulpa is sent to fulfill a mission, but does not come back and pursues its peregrinations as a half-conscious, dangerously mischievous puppet. The same thing, it is said, may happen when the maker of the tulpa dies before having dissolved it. Yet, as a rule, the phantom either disappears suddenly at the death of the magician or gradually vanishes like a body that perishes for want of food. On the other hand, some tulpas are expressly intended to survive their creator and are especially formed for that purpose. These may be considered as veritable tulkus, and in fact, the demarcation between tulpus and tulkus is far from being clearly drawn. The existence of both is grounded on the same theories. Must we credit these strange accounts of rebellious materializations, phantoms which have become real beings, or must we reject them all as mere fantastic tales and wild projects of the imagination. Perhaps the latter course is the wisest. I affirm nothing. I only relate what I have heard from people whom, in other circumstances, I have found trustworthy, but they may have deluded themselves in all sincerity. Nevertheless, allowing for a great deal of exaggeration and sensational addition, I could hardly deny the possibility of visualizing and animating a tulpa. Besides, having had few opportunities of seeing thought forms, my habitual incredulity led me to make experiments for myself, and my efforts were attended with some success. In order to avoid being influenced by the forms of the Lama's deities, which I saw daily around me in paintings and images, I chose for my experiment a most insignificant character, a monk, short and fat, of an innocent and jolly type. I shut myself in psalms and proceeded to perform the prescribed concentration of thought and other rites. After a few months, the phantom monk was formed. His form grew gradually fixed and lifelike looking. He became a kind of guest living in my apartment. I then broke my seclusion and started for a tour with my servants and tents. The monk included himself in the party. Though I lived in the open, riding on horseback for miles each day, the illusion persisted. I saw the fat Trapa, T-R-A-P-A. Now and then it was not necessary for me to think of him to make him appear. The phantom performed various actions of the kind that are natural to travelers and that I had not commanded. For instance, he walked, stopped, looked around. The illusion was mostly visual, but sometimes I felt as if a robe was lightly rubbing against me, and once a hand seemed to touch my shoulder. The features which I had imagined when building my phantom gradually underwent a change. The fat, chubby-cheeked fellow grew leaner. His face assumed a vaguely mocking, sly, malignant look. He became more troublesome and bold. In brief, he escaped my control. Once a herdsman who brought me a present of butter saw the tulpa in my tent and took it for a live llama. I ought to have let the phenomenon follow its course, but the presence of that unwanted companion began to prove trying to my nerves. It turned into a day nightmare. Moreover, I was beginning to plan my journey to Lhasa, and I needed a quiet brain devoid of other preoccupations, so I decided to dissolve the phantom. I succeeded, but only after 6 months of hard struggle. My mind creature was tenacious of life. There is nothing strange in the fact that I may have created my own hallucination. The interesting point is that these cases of materialization, others see the thought forms that have been created. Tibetans disagree in their explanations of such phenomena. Some think that a material form is really brought into being. Others consider the apparition as a mere case of suggestion, the creator's thought impressing others and causing them to see what he himself sees. In spite of the clever efforts made by the Tibetans to find rational explanations for all prodigies, a number remain unexplained, perhaps because they are pure inventions, or perhaps for other reasons. A Tibetan generally admits that highly advanced mystics do not die in the usual way, but may dissolve their bodies when and where they like and leave no traces. It is said that Rishunkpa disappeared in this way, and that during a special contemplative meditation, Dagmidma, the wife of Lama Marpa, ended her life by incorporating herself in her husband. But these are all personalities of long past centuries. It is more interesting to hear about an occurrence of recent date, and the interest still increases when the prodigy, instead of taking place in some lonely hermitage, happened before hundreds of witnesses. I may say at once that I was not amongst the latter, and that my information is derived from the account of men who affirmed that they saw the wonder. My only connection with the miraculous event is that I personally knew the Lama who is believed to have vanished in a mysterious way. The latter, styled Kyongbu Rinpoche, was one of the spiritual teachers and religious advisors of the Tashi Lama. When I visited Chingatsi in 1916, he was already an old man and lived as a hermit some miles away from that town, near the bank of the Yezru Tsangpo, in brackets, Brahmaputra. The mother of the Tashi Lama held him in high reverence, and when I saw her guest, I heard several stories about that venerable Lama. It was reported that as the years went by, the size of the learned ascetic gradually decreased. This, according to the Tibetans, is a sign of great spiritual achievement, and legends relate how the bodies of some Dubtabs who have been tall men become reduced to minute proportions and finally disappear. At that time, the new temple sheltering the huge image of the coming Buddha Maitreya was near completion, and a consecration ceremony was being talked of. The Tashi Lama wished his old spiritual advisor to perform the consecration rite, but the latter declined, saying that he would have passed away before the temple could be finished. To this, the Tashi Lama replied, it is said, by beseeching the hermit to delay his death till he had blessed the new building. Though such a request may astonish the reader, it is in accord with Tibetan ideas regarding the power which high mystics possess of choosing the time of their death. The hermit promised to perform the consecration. Then, about a year after my visit to Chingatsi, the temple being ready and a day appointed for the Rabnas solemnity, the Tashi Lama sent a beautiful sedan chair and an escort to Kyumbu Rinpoche to bring him to Tashi Lumpo's Gompa. The men of the escort saw the Lama sitting in the chair. The latter was closed, and the porters started. Now, thousands of people had gathered at Tashi Lumpum for the religious festival of inauguration. To their utmost astonishment, they saw the Lama coming alone and on foot. Silently, he crossed the temple threshold, walked straight toward the giant image of Maitreya until his body touched it, and then gradually became incorporated with it. Some time later, the sedan chair with the escort arrived. Attendants opened its door. The chair was empty. Many believe that the Lama has never been seen again. The occurrence was odd enough to hold my attention, but my interest was deepened by the fact that I had been acquainted with its hero and the initial circumstances that led up to the prodigy. That is to say, with the request of the Tashi Lama regarding the consecration of the temple, and further, because the place where the wonder is said to have happened was familiar to me. I burned with a desire of going to Chingatsi to inquire about the Lama's last days and discover his tomb, if he was really dead. But when I heard of the bizarre miracle, I was at Lhasa in disguise, and neither Yongdam nor I could have kept up our incognito in Shigatse, where we both had a number of acquaintances. To be unmasked means to be immediately escorted over the border, and I intended, after my stay to Lhasa, to visit Samye Monastery, Samye Monastery, and several others in southern Tibet. Also to tour the historical ground of the Yarlung province. This compelled me to renounce any attempt at investigation. Yet before we left Tibet, Yongden managed to put some discreet questions about the Shigatse wonder to a few men who seemed capable of holding somewhat enlightened views on the subject. Unfortunately, the event was already several years old. Great changes had taken place in Sang since that time, and more than one prodigy had been related in connection with the Tashi Lama's flight to China. Moreover, the political atmosphere was not favorable to Tsang. Men of rank had become exaggeratedly reserved about the least thing which could be interpreted as exalting the exiled Tashi Lama, and those who were near to him, nor did they dare increase the prestige of the Maitreya temple, whose erection, according to the public rumor, had aroused unfriendly and jealous feelings at the Lhasa court. We gathered the following opinions. Number 1, the Lama had created a phantom of himself which appeared to have entered the sedan chair and then acted as had been told in the temple of Maitreya. This phantom had vanished, as its master wished, when touching the image, while the Lama may have all the time remained in his hermitage. Number 2, or Kyongbu Rinpoche had been able to produce from afar a collective hallucination. Number 3, some suggested that the Lama was already dead when the miracle took place, but had left behind him a kind of phantom of his creation, which he sent to Tashi Lumpo. Number 4, I also remembered that a disciple of Kyongbu Rinpoche had told me that by the means of certain kinds of concentration of mind, a phenomenon may be prepared in connection with a peculiar event which is to take place in the future. Once success is obtained with the concentration, the process goes on mechanically without further cooperation of the man who has projected the energy required to bring it about. It was even said that this man, in most cases, is completely incapable of preventing the phenomena which he had planned to take place at the appointed time. The energy generated, which has shaped itself in a certain way, is now beyond his control. Much more could be said regarding psychic phenomena in Tibet, but the account of a single inquirer cannot be very complete, especially under the difficult conditions in which researches must be pursued in that country. I earnestly wish that my account may awaken in some scientists more qualified than myself for such work the desire to undertake serious investigations of the phenomena which I have briefly mentioned in the present book. Psychic research may be guided by the same spirit as any scientific study. The discoveries which can be made in that field have nothing of supernatural, nothing which may justify the superstitious beliefs and ramblings in which some have indulged regarding the matter. On the contrary, such research may help to elucidate the mechanism of so-called miracles, and once explained, the miracle is no more a miracle. The end. And this concludes this wonderful book. So I'd just like to say here that I've really enjoyed reading it. I hope you enjoyed it too. Please subscribe to my channel as I'm trying to build a good channel. And I'm in the process right now of reading another book by Alexandra David-Neel, and it's called My Journey to Lhasa. So please join me there.